Namaste, everyone. Good evening and a very warm welcome to all our participants for this 10-day IKS certificate course on the storytelling legacy of Bharat, understanding how stories shaped and sustained an ancient civilization. I'm Dr. Nidhi Shendurnikar from Nucleus of Learning and Development, and along with my co-moderator and co-facilitator for this certificate course, Dr. Vikas Rajpopat, I am delighted to welcome all of you to this 10-day learning journey in which all of us will be together. And we also have with us Zelam Tambe, one of our speakers. She will be taking the session tomorrow. And I believe we will also be shortly joined by another one of our resource persons, Dr. Pinku Jha. And of course, Dr. Vikas is already there with us. This particular IKS certificate course, which is the fourth edition of NLD's certificate courses in the IKS series, is being organized in collaboration with the BRB College of Commerce, Raichur, Karnataka. And we at NLD are extremely grateful to the organizing team at BRB College of Commerce, the convener, Shri Sandeep Karabhariji, principal of the college, the patrons of this course, C.A. Dhaval Jobanputraji and C.A. Chetan Dhokaji. And before I can hand over to Dr. Vikas, just to give a very brief backdrop about the certificate courses in IKS that NLD is offering. So this is the fourth certificate course in the IKS series, and we are very happy to share with all our participants that the first edition of the IKS certificate course was successfully accomplished in February 2025, wherein we navigated the extent and scope of IKS. The second edition, which focused on the pathways and trajectories of Indian knowledge systems, or Bharatiya Gyan Parampara, as us like to refer to it. It was carried out in June, July 2025, and the last edition, that is the third edition, was done in November 2025. And the theme of the last edition was integrating Indian knowledge systems in academia through NEP 2020, a vision for civilizational reclamation. So this is the fourth such attempt in from our side. And this particular edition, we decided that we'll focus on the storytelling traditions of Bharat and explore the storytelling legacy of our great country and ancient civilization. So on behalf of the entire NLD team, especially the coordinator of this course, Dr. Vikas Rajpopat, assistant professor at Guru Ghasidas Vishwavidyalaya, Bilaspur, Chhattisgarh, my co-panelists, my co-resource persons, Zelam Tambe, Dr. Pratibha, Dr. Pradyuman, and Dr. Pinku. I take this opportunity to welcome all of you on this 10-day academic journey. And with this, I hand over to Dr. Vikas for a quick introduction.
Good evening, everyone. As you can see that we are a team of individuals who are very flexible. So Dr. Nidhi was in the role of host, and now she is in the role of the guest. As you already know that today's resource person is Dr. Nidhi, and I would love to introduce her profile to you. Dr. Nidhi Shendurnikar has a doctoral degree in political science from the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, Gujarat. She has close to a decade of teaching and research experience in media and communication studies, having supervised over 60 postgraduate dissertations. She has been a fellow of the University Grants Commission, UGC, Government of India, for her doctoral work on conflict mediation between India and Pakistan, and media's role from 2011 to 2015. She has worked as a visiting lecturer in the Faculty of Journalism and Communication from 2011 to 2014 and as an assistant professor in the same faculty from 2017 to 2024. During her academic tenure in the faculty, she was associated with a research project awarded to the Faculty of Journalism and Communication and the Faculty of Family and Community Sciences, the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, by the National Commission for Women (NCW) from September 2021 to December 2022. The project investigated the representation of women on a Gujarati OTT platform. As part of this project, she participated in developing the grant proposal, training field assistants, developing research tools such as survey questionnaire, interview guidelines, and content analysis criteria. She conducted 19 in-depth qualitative interviews with Gujarati media and entertainment industry professionals as part of the project. She also assisted in the field data collection in several regions of Gujarat. Prior to this, she has participated in a project on caste in urban spaces at Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai, for which she conducted in-depth interviews with participants in Ahmedabad, Gujarat. She has also served as consultant for Deepak Foundation's project with the government of Gujarat, conducting interviews with government officials in Gandhinagar. And her profile is so long, but I am skipping a few parts and reaching to the last part. She was a fellow of the Center for Indigenous Knowledge Systems, Anadi Foundation, Tamil Nadu, from July to October 2024, researching on the oral storytelling traditions of the tribals of eastern central Gujarat. So she is the first resource person of this FDP, this certificate course. I welcome Dr. Nidhi. Uh, Please take over, Dr. Nidhi.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Vikas, for this generous introduction. So as we dive into the storytelling legacy of Bharatvarsha, the today's session is meant to build a broad overview, give you an encompassing idea about the richness and the diversity of our storytelling traditions. And the upcoming sessions in this certificate course will build up on what I will speak about today. So we may not be able to go into details about a lot of different storytelling traditions that India is endowed with, but as we go on and as you learn to understand and appreciate our storytelling legacy, you will learn about different storytelling traditions of Bharat. I request all participants to kindly be on mute through the session. The chat box is open for questions, discussion, interaction. I request Dr. Vikas to help me moderate the chat box. And since Zelam is also here, I also request Zelam to kindly keep a tab on anything that pops up in the chat box. And if anything needs my attention, I'll be very, very happy to take a pause and then we can move ahead. So let's start today's session. Since we are speaking about storytelling, we need to start with a story. That goes without saying, right? So I'm sharing a small clipping of renowned storyteller Deepa Kiranji, where she is delivering a TED talk about the significance of stories in all kinds of ecosystems, in education, in lives, in civilization, and why storytelling is so crucial and important. And taking this thread ahead, what we will do is we will try to understand how particularly storytelling played an important role in sustaining, shaping, preserving Bharatiya civilization and its values for a very, very long time, and it still continues to do so. So let's start. So this is Deepa Kiranji. I hope you can see my screen. Zelam, is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So as I said, this is a TED talk by Srimati Deepa Kiran. And at this short clip that we are watching together, it will reinforce the significance of storytelling in these different areas that I just spoke about. So let's pay all our attention to this.
सुन लो एक कहानी इसमें राजा है न रानी मैं आज सुनाने आई हूँ मैं आज सुनाने आई हूँ तारप तारारा. Once upon a time, the frogs decided that we are going to have a race. Arey, nobody looks at us. Everybody is interested in the tiger and in the elephant and in the lion. So we'll have a unique race. And this race was to climb up a fort right to the top. All the animals came to cheer the frogs. Woo, they went, and the frogs went racing. They went scampering up the fort. Of course, it was slippery. They kept falling off, and only few frogs continued. Now the audience which was cheering slowly realized, this is not quite a correct thing to do. And they started saying, come back, get down, or you're going to hurt yourself, come back. The few who were going up, yeah, better to come back. Slowly they started sliding down. But one fellow, he kept going. Now everyone got very worried. Come back! You will die! You will fall down! Frogs are not meant to climb! This is so dangerous! No. He went climbing and he reached the top. He won the race. Everybody clapped. They couldn't help clapping. Yes, just like this. And the vulture, who was the umpire sitting on top, said, "Gentlemen, I have a question for you. When everybody was telling you not to climb, how did you still have the courage to do it?" And this winner frog said, Well, these and other stories are what I would tell my students when I taught in the central government schools in Kendra Vidyalaya. No wonder that 2-3 weeks into any new school that I went, children would walk past me and say, ma'am, like I was some long-lost friend of theirs. And why did this happen? Simply because I had shared a story with them. I had stood there in flesh and blood and said, you know what? I value spending time with you. I like being with you. I like talking to you. And that's what storytelling does. And together, the children and I, we traveled on the wings of words. We traveled to new lands, to new places. We laughed, we cried, we got scared, we got excited, surprised. And then I brought them back safely. And so there was such a trust and a bond that built between us. This is the power of storytelling, particularly of oral narration, where you stand or sit with someone and tell them stories.
Great. Thank you. I hope that with this short clip that all of us just watched together, the impact, the power, and the significance of storytelling is pretty clear to you. And I'm sure that all of us, when we were students, we remember teachers who made their classes interesting, who made the subject interesting, who made learning engaging with stories. Probably we do not remember teachers enough who did not tell stories in their classrooms, even for very technical subjects like mathematics, chemistry, engineering, history, science. Storytelling is a very powerful tool that educators have been using. And where has all of this come to us from? So, authors Rao and Ramakrishna, in their paper on Indian value system and ethics, where they study Ramayana, say that Indians are embedded in narrative. The spell of the story has always exercised a special potency in the oral-based Indian traditions. Please look at the word oral carefully. The preferred medium of instruction and transmission of psychological, metaphysical, and social thought in India continues to be the story. So we are trying to understand a civilization whose nerve centers were stories. We are trying to understand a knowledge system that thrived on oral storytelling traditions. So let's begin. I'm sharing my screen and let's start understanding why storytelling is significant to Bharatvarsha. So as I shared with everyone, I hope my screen is visible, Zelam. Now I may not be able to see any of you, just able to see my presentation.
Yes, ma'am. It's
Yes.
visible.
Yeah, so in this session, what I'm going to very quickly cover, since we are just going to have a bird's eye view, is we will talk about the key attributes of India's civilizational knowledge system and why stories are still very significant to Bharatiya Gyan Parampara. We'll also quickly talk about some global folklore traditions, because stories are important to all indigenous civilizations, not just Indian, but all indigenous civilizations. Then we will try to understand what are some particular characteristics and attributes of the Indian storytelling tradition. After which I will share some examples of popular storytelling forms in India. And all of us are aware that India has a wide variety and diversity of storytelling traditions. There are musical storytelling traditions. There are stories which are told in the form of dance. There are stories told in the form of puppetry. There are stories told using props such as masks, and then there are stories told in the narrative form. So Bharat is unique, very creative, and very ingenuous as far as storytelling is concerned. And then what storytelling means for the future, and why is it important for the next generation to understand, appreciate, and preserve our ancient storytelling repository, is what we will end with. So when I asked one of my professors to define India, which is kind of a tricky question for all of us, because if somebody from another nation asks us to define India, or if I'm traveling to a foreign country, for example, and if somebody asks me, okay, tell me what is India like, tell me what is Bharat all about. So this response from him, I think it's the best response that I could ever get. He said, India means knowledge, and knowledge means India. If there is something that has defined us as Indians, as the custodians of Bharatiya civilization, as the inheritors of the world's ancient civilization, it is knowledge. Ano bhadraha kritvo yantu vishwatah. Let knowledge come to us from all directions. And India's knowledge system was primarily an oral tradition, and in some remote regions of our country, even today, this oral tradition of preserving knowledge, transmitting knowledge and wisdom from one generation to another still continues. So Bharat as a knowledge system focused on oral dissemination. So we know that before human beings and civilization started documenting literature, started documenting knowledge in the written format, in a very systematic format, oral communication and oral transmission of language, literature, knowledge, ideas was the way how human beings communicated with each other, and how they preserved what they had, and how they also did it to the next generation. And one key aspect of any oral tradition is that it is committed to your memory. So for example, if I'm a storyteller coming from an oral tradition, probably I have no formal training. I have not gone to any university or college and undertaken any formal degree in that particular tradition. And there are scores of examples which I will share, Dr. Vikas and Zelam will share as we go on. But this knowledge is stored in our memory. It is committed to our memory. So the stories that our grandparents, aunts and uncles, neighbors, parents have told to us, we have not documented it somewhere. We have not written it down somewhere. They are with us. They stay with us because that is what defines Bharatiya Gyan Parampara. Knowledge was mostly committed to memory. It was heard and remembered through the Shruti Smriti Parampara, which was developed very systematically in a Gurukul. And this kind of knowledge was concise and specific. So these attributes of Indian knowledge systems make it a perfect fit for storytelling to thrive, for storytelling to flourish. So what is an oral tradition? So one important thing about an oral tradition is that you share your culture, your values, your stories, ideas, beliefs, etc. through word of mouth. You don't put it is not tangible, it is intangible, and you share it through poetry, you share it through songs, you share it through stories, and this is how a community comes together, and this is how a community experiences shared values. So oral tradition means that it helps us to preserve our culture, history, tradition, and ideas. And through an oral tradition, you get to understand what somebody else's world looks like. And how is this done? This is done through hearing. For example, if my guru teaches me something, I hear it, I memorize it, and there are many important Patha techniques through which this memorization is developed. I remember it and then I reproduce it, I pass it on, or I use it in my life. And this knowledge is concise and specific. So as you see what the Indian American writer Santha Ramarao says, it is in the oral traditions of the villages that the arts of India are really alive. If you really want to see where is the tradition of India alive, it is alive and thriving in the hinterlands of India. You can probably preserve it in museums, but that may be pointless to people who have seen eternity in their earth. So she's emphasizing on the significance of oral traditions and the contribution of oral traditions to the preservation of knowledge systems. So let's move to why are stories significant to IKS, and because we have focused our learning with respect to IKS in this certificate course. We will talk about Indian knowledge systems, but as I said, stories are important for all ancient indigenous civilizations. So there are other civilizations like the Greek, Babylonian civilization, and so many others. So you will find stories in these civilizations as well. So basically, a story is a cultural unit. It is a product of culture, and it is a product or it is an entity that serves a cultural purpose. The idea of having a story and passing it on to the next generation is that you want to make the other generation understand what is your perspective of life, what is your perspective about the world, what values do you hold dear to you and your community. So if you want to pass on a certain perspective about life, culture, and values to the next generation, storytelling is extremely important. And all indigenous civilizations have used storytelling for preserving their culture, building their identity, and transmitting their knowledge pool to the next generation. So as we know, stories, and since Indian knowledge system is knowledge that is very concise and precise. For example, In Sanskrit, we know, and also I'm sure in other regional languages, there are suktas, there are sutras, there are subhashits, where you have 2 lines or 4 lines, you have a mantra, which is very, very short, but it conveys a very profound perspective about life and the world. So stories serve a culture purpose because they offer a civilizational perspective in a very compressed manner. In a few lines, you understand what this civilization is all about. So stories are effective communication tools for preserving civilizational knowledge and communicating ideas. For example, Bharatiya civilization stands on the 4 principles of dharma, artha, kama, moksha, the 4 purusharthas. If I want to convey this complex idea in a simple manner to somebody who is a part of my civilization but is probably not aware about these concepts, or somebody from outside my civilization, I can effectively convey it through stories. So the purpose of storytelling for an ancient civilization like Bharat is to seek truth as also to preserve knowledge. So as I told you, being Indian means that you're pursuing knowledge. So in the Bharatiya perspective, the purpose of stories was to reach to the ultimate goal of life, reach to the truth in whatever perspective you think the truth has to be reached to, and gain knowledge, preserve that knowledge, use it not just for your own community but for the welfare of the world. So we often say Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, world is a family, which means that the knowledge we have, we don't want to restrict it to benefiting ourselves. We want to pass it on to the entire world. Stories are also very good for entertainment and leisure. So storytelling also serves the purpose of providing a break from the monotony of life, and also it was used as a source of leisure and entertainment. Also, storytelling serves multiple purposes. It has a lot of cognitive benefits. For example, in the Bharatiya perspective, it leads to the purification of the mind, chitta shuddhi. It leads to intellectual churning, because when you listen to a story as a listener, and we will come to the role of the listener very soon. As a listener, you also play a very, very active role in the story. You also become creative, you interpret, you learn language skills, you learn listening skills. It also encourages the promotion of thinking capacity, scientific rigor, spirit of inquiry, and it gives you exposure to a variety of perspectives. So this is why stories are significant to Bharat, because our civilizational framework has been scientific, it has been intellectual, it always promotes inquiry. We are encouraged to ask questions. We are encouraged to engage in free thinking. We don't follow one path to truth, or one path to liberation, or one path to the eternal. We accept multiple paths, we accept multiple perspectives. So it helps to generate empathy, it helps to cultivate moral values, and an individual is trained to look at a situation from multiple perspectives. And this is why stories were always important to IKS, and they still continue to be important to Indian knowledge systems, especially from a civilizational standpoint. For example, if you have ever followed the work of Padma awardees, those individuals who in the last decade have been bestowed with Padma Shri, Padma Vibhushan, and I really encourage all of you to go through their works and profiles. One thing that you will definitely notice is that many of them come from remote areas. These were people who were doing very good work very quietly, and they were rightly recognized. by the government through this Padma honor. Second is a lot of these Padma awardees were preserving dying oral traditions. It could be some form of art, some form of craft, some form of story, some form of puppetry, etc., etc. And they were working very, very hard to preserve it. So even today in India, we have individuals, groups, and communities who are striving to preserve our oral narratives, to preserve our oral traditions. So this is a screenshot from a very well-known TV series, Upanishad Ganga. If some of you have watched it, that's great. If you have not watched it, I highly recommend it. I think the 33 episodes of Upanishad Ganga are a course in Indian knowledge systems by themselves. It was produced by Chinmay, and I've just put a screenshot of one story from that series, which talks about the concept of bliss. So happiness and bliss is a very philosophical concept. It's very complicated. If I ask you what does happiness mean to you, you know, but it's difficult to explain. So this episode number 32, it talks about the concept of bliss in Bharatiya Jnana Parampara, but how they do it is they explain it, they tell it to you, the viewer, in the form of a story. The second screenshot is from an initiative which is Storytelling Crafts and Makers. You can just go to Instagram and follow them. They did a very interesting initiative in COVID. They connected traditional artisans, traditional craftsmen and craftswomen who were telling stories through their art and craft onto the online platform so that their stories would be heard by all over the world. So Lokesh ji and Gauri ji, as the researchers and the storyteller, were a bridge between these traditional artisans and the digital world. So very quickly now, as I told you, all indigenous civilizations are replete and rich with storytelling traditions. So I've just put a few so that we can appreciate what other civilizations also have to offer. And this is also a very important attribute of Bharatiya Gyan Parampara, that we're always ready to imbibe and emulate what other civilizations have to offer us in terms of positive learning. So for example, Ireland has a Gaelic oral culture. Then in Kenya, there are traditional narrative performances. For example, during my visit to Kenya in 2024, I was fortunate to visit the Maasai tribe, and I witnessed their local dance performance, traditional narrative performances. So the African subcontinent is also full of such traditions. Then we have Chinese folk tales, which have in the modern times been adopted into TV dramas and movies. We have Japanese folk tales and legends. Then we have Welsh folk narrative traditions from Wales in Great Britain. Now, these Welsh traditions, they have stories about fairies, devils, witches, wise men, ghosts, animals, magic, etc. Right? Very, very similar to what we have. Then we have Spanish folklore, which is called Cuentos de Caleja. I don't know how it is pronounced in Spanish. We have witch lore from Denmark. We have the Pistacho legend from Peru, Latin America. We have Yangzhou storytelling from China. We have Shahnameh and Mullah Nasruddin from Iran. We have the Runo songs from the Balto-Finnic belt, and which are folk songs from southeastern Estonia. So much and so more. So, for example, there is an oral tradition which is called Matthias folklore tradition, and you don't need to remember all this. This is just sharing. In this oral tradition, there are jokes and humor, which are an integral part of this tradition. This is usually found in Central Europe, that is Czech Republic, Slovakia, Ukraine, Serbia, Slovenia, etc. And this oral storytelling tradition is based on the King Matthias, who occupies a very, very special place in Central European folklore. In Australia, you have the bush verse, which is part of traditional Australian storytelling. So we also need to understand and appreciate global folklore traditions, even as we are learning about our own oral storytelling traditions. So let's move forward. As I told you, India's storytelling traditions are rich. They are diverse. There is a lot of variety. For example, I am in Gujarat, and if I go to the northern part of Gujarat, the storytelling tradition is different. If I go to central Gujarat, in the same region, which is just 100 kilometers away from where I stay, there are different tribes, and each tribe has their own storytelling tradition. If I go to South Gujarat, which is the Dang region, and Zelam will talk more about it because she was involved in creating, and she was part of a play which brought an oral storytelling tradition from South Gujarat onto the stage. So there is a lot of variety in Bharatiya storytelling, different regions, different traditions, and most of these traditions have cultivated and have flourished because of the Guru Shishya Parampara, not strictly only in the ambience of a Gurukul, but for example, a father who's a traditional storyteller or a mother who's a traditional storyteller has trained and groomed their children or their young people in their family in storytelling. So this is very important that our indigenous education system, which we completely discarded for a modern Western education system, our indigenous education system played a lot of emphasis on storytelling. Our scriptures and epics like Ramayana, Mahabharata, Raghuvansham, Bhagavad, all of these were used as pedagogical tools in the learning environment. Also, in the context of Bharatiya storytelling, and why storytelling important? Because at least in the traditional sense now, because we have moved to a digital world, you can also do digital storytelling, which we see often on Instagram in those under 1 minute reels. What are they trying to do? They're actually trying to tell a story. So in a typical storytelling situation, the storyteller and the listener is face to face. There is personal interaction happening, and that makes it more impactful than other means of communication. And even though this is an ancient technique, it's a legacy which Bharat has, we are still using it in modern times. So stories were always told with a larger purpose. Of course, entertainment and leisure was a byproduct, but stories were never told in Bharat only with the purpose of leisure or entertainment, only to relax or have fun. They were told for knowledge. They were told for civilizational grooming. They were told to convey what was happening in the society of that time. They were told to share what was happening in people's lives. So in the Bharatiya tradition, stories have a much, much larger purpose. They go beyond the simple act of just narrating a story and listening to it and going back home. No, the purpose is deeper. And we know in Dr. Vikas's session, he will talk in detail about Natya Shastra, but we know that stories become lively and dynamic because of the emotions that are being used, because of the language. So in the Bharatiya context, we have the Navarasas, Shringar Ras, Hasya Ras, Karuna Ras, Raudra Ras, Veer Ras, Bhayanak Ras, Bibhatsa Ras, Adbhut Ras, and Shanta Ras. All of these rasas made storytelling very purposeful in the Bharatiya context. And Bharatiya storytelling, as I said, not just for entertainment, but also for knowledge dissemination. And by telling stories and listening to stories, we wanted to understand more about the world. We wanted to understand more about the times that we were living in. We wanted to understand more about the behavior of people, their values, and their culture. So you can easily say that the storyteller was the influencer of that era. Today we have digital influencers. Storytellers were influencers of that time. And we can talk about what storytelling in the Indian context teaches. So it teaches a lot of self-reflection, open-mindedness, harmonious relationships with the other, holistic view, moving beyond binaries. So storytelling was meant to cultivate all these values in people. So after listening to a story, you could think, you could ponder, you could introspect, you could be open-minded to a very different perspective. You could also empathize, you could learn some moral lesson, you could have a larger view of the world. And Bharatiya stories have never seen the world, or rather Bharatiya civilization never looks at life and the world in binaries, this versus that, us versus them, etc. So we'll talk more about this, but typically in the narrative tradition, we have Shabdan, which means there is reliance on scriptures, what is written in our knowledge texts, or verbal testimony, that which is passed through the oral tradition. And we also pay attention to Shravana, that is listening to the teachings of the guru or the mentor, and then imbibing them and taking them forward. So one important attribute of Bharatiya storytelling, which probably I think makes it very different from other storytelling traditions in other indigenous civilizations, is that the listener is very, very important. And to such an extent that sometimes the story, the listener becomes probably more important than the story. So we know there are so many examples of Bharatiya storytelling traditions. For example, we have Kathasaritsagar, Ramayana, Mahabharata, Hitopdesh, Jatak Tales, Panchatantra, Amarchitra Katha, the list goes on. And if we explore the regional language traditions of India, there are many more examples, not just restricted to narratives, but you have stories being told through Rangoli, you have stories being told in paintings, you have stories being told in sculpture. For example, when I visited the Modhera Sun Temple in the northern part of Gujarat, the temple has a story to tell. The architecture there has a story to tell. Or if you visit Hampi and the glorious remains of the Vijayanagar Empire there, every monument there, the Virupaksha temple, it has a story to tell. So the role of the listener was extremely important in the Bharatiya storytelling tradition. It was important not just to be a good storyteller, it was very, very important to be a very good listener. As Deepa Kiranji was telling us in her TED talk, that when my students listen to the stories that I'm telling them, there is a bond of trust and faith that develops between me, the storyteller, and the listeners of the story. For example, we know that in the context of Mahabharata, Dhritarashtra, because he was unable to see what was happening in the war arena in Kurukshetra, he relied on Sanjay to recount the events of the war, to recount the events of the battlefield, and he trusted what Sanjay had to tell him. We call it Sanjay Uvach. And Sanjay was endowed with Divya Drishti. He had a divine vision where he could see, and he recounted the happenings of the battlefield to Maharaj Dhritarashtra. So according to Srimati Deepa Kiranji and This is from a lecture that she delivered on the art of listening in oral traditions of India. She says that there are three types of listeners in Bharatiya storytelling. The first is Adhamadhikari, the listener who approaches a story from purely an entertainment point of view. For example, you go and watch a movie. You just want to have fun, relax, and you want to forget your sorrows for the next 3 hours. Then we have Madhyamadhikari, who is a listener who goes to listen to a story with expectations of both entertainment as well as some aesthetic appeal, artistic appeal, but perhaps he's not intellectually very equipped to understand the aesthetics and art of the story. And the third is the Uttamadhikari, which means that this is the story listener who is looking at a deeper meaning, who's looking to go beyond what is very evident and apparent in the story, and he wants to explore the larger meaning of life through the story that he's listening to. So as a storyteller, it is the duty of the storyteller to cater to the requirements of all these three types of listeners. So all our oral storytelling traditions, some of which survive even today, they always kept the listener at the center of the narrative. So as the storyteller is narrating the story, she's keeping in mind the questions, concerns, doubts, anxieties of the listeners, and she's trying to address all of this while sharing the story. So for example, as a storyteller, if I raise a question, I know that this is a question that is bothering you as the listener. I raise it and then I share my answer. I talk to you about it. So guiding the listener through the whole process of storytelling was the job of the storyteller. So traditional Indian storytelling, and we do see that some of it survives even today, even though there are people who are struggling to preserve these storytelling traditions. When I do the session that I'm meant to do, based on my field work in Eastern Central Gujarat, where I spent time with the tribal community, understanding their oral storytelling traditions, we realize that it is challenging to preserve these traditions, especially owing to the onslaught of modernization, globalization, commercialization, and digital penetration. So Bharatiya storytelling, as I said, it took a very holistic view of the world. So for example, you will find many themes of nature and environment in Bharatiya storytelling. So many of our stories are about rivers. For example, stories about the river Narmada, Ganga, Saraswati. We have stories about sun god, trees. We have stories about animals. So in many of our stories, like stories about Jatayu and Jambavan, the animal characters are at the center of our story. Many of the stories that all of us have grown up listening to, they don't have human characters, they have animal characters, and we remember them with great delight. They are an essential part of our childhood memory. So Bharatiya storytelling always looked at providing an equal space and scope to other creatures other than human beings, right? So harmony with nature, respect for natural environment, preservation of natural environment, all of which comes under the concept of sustainability today. For example, we talk about SDGs. We talk about diversity, equality, and inclusion, DEI. All of these principles were already a part of our storytelling traditions. For example, in my field work, I found that the tribal community with which I worked and tried to understand their storytelling tradition, most of their stories were about the creation of the earth, about the creation of nature, about water, about animals, about how to live life in tandem with nature. So, respect for all living beings, emphasis on ethical and moral living is a crucial aspect of storytelling. Also, as I told you earlier, uh, Bharatiya storytelling is not unidimensional. It embodies various perspectives, and uh, Bharatiya storytelling also encouraged lot of creative liberty, which Professor Nagaraj Paturi, if I remember, he calls it Mishra, which means that in the Indic tradition, there is one story, and as it moves on from one generation to another, maybe changes, there are layers of creativity added to it, there are changes done in the story, and nobody really minds. And that is how we know there are so many versions of our two major epics, Ramayana and Mahabharata. In fact, you will have indigenous and tribal versions of Ramayana and Mahabharata. So creative liberty has been given ample scope in Bharatiya storytelling, of course, with the foundation being laid in dharmic principles, because dharma itself encourages questioning and multiple interpretations. Uh, Bharatiya storytelling, as I said, it doesn't merely serve the purpose of entertainment, it serves the purpose of bhakti, okay, as in surrender, devotion, as also it serves the purpose of knowledge. So, for example, when we sit down for a katha, we have a Satyanarayan Katha. We have a Katha that revolves around many different festivals. For example, there is a Katha or a story around the Karva Chauth Vrat. So for all kinds of celebrations that we do, there are stories attached to it. So uh, it encourages devotion, and it also supplements you with knowledge. So while you're listening to the katha, which is like a slow recitation, very systematic recitation, whosoever is reciting the katha, who's probably knowledgeable about it, will explain it to you very properly, will elucidate, will give you illustrations, and in between, he or she will also give you examples and moral lessons. So, for example, when we do Ganesh Sthapana in our house, and when we do the entire ritualistic puja for it, it's not simply mechanical mantrochar. There are stories involved in the entire process, and through these stories, the priest is trying to tell you that these are moral lessons that you should keep in mind. So, education, moral socialization, participation, interaction, all of these are important attributes of Bharatiya storytelling tradition. And another important characteristic, why stories were so important, because Bharatiya civilization always thinks of knowledge as a collective enterprise. We don't think of knowledge as an individual enterprise, that if I have knowledge, I should share it, I should spread it widely, and it's okay if I don't get credit for it, right? And this is something that Professor Kapil Kapoor has said very well. At this moment, I'm not able to remember that particular example, but I will get back to you if I remember it. So, the curation and preservation of knowledge in Bharatiya Parampara is not individualistic. It is collective. It is a community enterprise. You create knowledge collectively, you preserve it collectively, and you also pass it on collectively. So Chanakya, when he compiled the Arthashastra, the most important thing that he shared is that I'm only building up on the principles of respected sages and scholars who came before me. So in Bharatiya Gyan Parampara, we also know that there is an authoritative text, then there is a commentary, and there are several other peripheral texts also. So knowledge is not a single point individualistic endeavor, it's a collective, creative communitarian endeavor. And so if I'm building a story, for example, if Zalem is telling a story, I acknowledge that it is Zalem's story. I share it with her and I build upon it and I pass it on to you. And then probably you tell the story to somebody else, and it no longer remains only Zalem's story. It becomes everyone's story. So storytelling in Bharat is a collective enterprise. जो हमने कहानियां सुनी हैं हमारे बचपन में, we may not know who is the storyteller, who is the author. We remember the story. The story is important, not who created it, right? And as I said, the entire Bharatiya storytelling tradition stands on the Shruti Smriti Parampara. You hear and you remember and you preserve and you pass on. Also, storytelling brought communities, people, families together in the Bharatiya context. Who tells us stories? Our teachers, our elders tell us stories. So it brings the family together. It brings the community together. For example, when Ramayana was broadcasted on Doordarshan, everybody knows that not every household had a television set. So you went to your neighbor's house, watched it collectively. So it created that collective bonding and spirit. So when stories are narrated in a familial setting, in a communitarian setting, it not only inculcates values, it strengthens the community bonding. And then you can inculcate dharmic values, you can simplify, not dilute, you can simplify dharmic concepts, which are the core concepts of our civilizational repository, and you can pass it on to the next generation. And why is that important? Because if you want to destroy any generation, any country, any community, you just need to destroy their culture. If they forget their culture, if they are uprooted from their culture, it robs them of their identity. It robs them of an understanding of who they are. It robs them of the anchor that they have in life, and then they move ahead on the path of destruction. So it is said that if you want to destroy a group of people or a nation, attack their culture, and if their culture is decimated, if their culture is decimated, the community, the people will decimate themselves. So let's take a quick pause at this moment. It's 7:29. So I just want to check if what I shared so far has made some sense to all of us here. Okay, thanks. I think Zalem put some examples and she shared something that I was speaking. So thank you so much, Zalem. Sorry, I had to switch on my charging point. Yes, any quick questions, any quick comments, anything that you think is important for us to reflect on at this moment?
Can I ask about tribal? What is specifically about tribal storytelling, and how does it differ from other types of storytelling? Because you say you are very close to tribes, right? So would like to understand and learn. It's very interesting and really very happy that you're there. And I'm amidst learning from you. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Vidyaji, for this question. Very good, important question. So my experience with tribal storytelling or storytelling of the indigenous people has been limited. I've worked on a project for the past 1.5 years, focused on into the eastern central belt of Gujarat. So tribal storytelling is not very different from Bharatiya storytelling, because and this is my opinion, others can discount and disagree. These are people who belong to Bharatvarsha. These are people who have inherited the same culture, the same legacy, and they have traditions, festivals, practices that are very, very similar to what we may be practicing in the mainstream, but they're also different and unique because they're very close to nature. A typical tribal Vanavasi community is not living the modern urban life that we are experiencing at the moment. So, for example, I believe urbanites are disconnected from nature. We may go to a park or to some picnic spot and experience nature, but the indigenous communities are extremely close with nature. So that is how their storytelling is different, because they bring in a lot of uh, they bring in a lot of elements that are closely connected to nature in their stories. Number two, they're also disconnected from a lot of intrusive forces, in my opinion. So, for example, they may not be impacted by or they may be less impacted by urbanization, digitalization. So, they have been able to preserve the stories in their original format. And third is, all tribal communities have their own dialects. So, for example, the community that I worked with, they had a very specific dialect of Gujarati, which is Rathvi. There is another dialect, Pili. So these are stories only their communities understand. As an outsider, if I don't know the language, I will have to depend on translation to understand their worldview, their story. So because the language may be inaccessible to me, so a lot of people may not understand it, but the community itself understands it best because it has also preserved its language. So tribal storytelling is also deeply connected with linguistic diversity, is also deeply connected with linguistic traditions. All stories are, but they are unique because they have been able to preserve their traditions better. But I still believe that all oral traditions in India are a part of the larger civilizational framework. I would not treat them as separate from Bharatiya civilization. This is tribal, this is not tribal. They may have their unique characteristics. It is appreciable, but I still see them as embedded in the dharmic framework, civilizational framework.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vidya ji. Okay, Madhvi ji is talking about Harikatha, Yakshaganas. Yes, yes. So, Madhvi ji, I'm going to some examples. Detailed explanation, I am inadequate to do a detailed explanation of Yakshagana because I think that's a storytelling tradition from Karnataka. So I would request if there is a participant from Karnataka, they can explain, or I'll find out more about it. So I'll get back to some detailed explanation on Harikatha and Yakshaganas in tomorrow's session, probably. I have a dedicated session to the fieldwork that I did in Gujarat because I am located here and I decided to explore the storytelling tradition of my region. This is something that I will quickly point out later. Yes,
Madhuri. Just shared my view. That is all. Yeah.
Yes, yes, it's very good, very good. Let's move ahead, and now I try to find.
I have another question. I just wanted
sure.
to know because it's very interesting when you told about the creation of earth, nature, and water. Those things are being, more focused in the tribal. And can we later at least get some kind of videos or any examples that you describe on that, especially on earth creation, which will really make children feel so nice about where they are and feel so
Yes.
close to nature, and we can also help them and bring us and them together to nature, close to nature.
Sure, Vidyaji, the next session that I will do on 25th is completely dedicated to the Gayana tradition, which I studied. So I'll talk more about this particular tribal community and their storytelling tradition and the stories that they prominently focus on in that particular session. I'm reserving it for that session.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, ma'am. This is Shweta here. Can I ask a small doubt?
Yes, yes, sure,
Ma'am,
Shweta ji. Please go ahead.
actually, I'm from Hyderabad, the south side. So this is very interesting session. I love to tell stories in my class. I'm learning a lot. Thank you for that. But will there be a session which will be covering the south side, the storytelling, like the Harikatha, Burrakatha, and all those, like the next series or something? Because that is what we are used to. This is new,
Yeah,
something
yeah.
new which we are learning.
Correct, correct. Yes, Shweta ji, thank you for that question. I'm coming in my next slide to some examples of storytelling traditions from across India. In this particular certificate course, none of us is from the southern part of India, so that is our limitation. Why? We were not able to do a detail, or we were not able to schedule a detailed session on the storytelling traditions of South India. But I am going to show a video on Vilupattu.
Mm-hmm.
Apologies for the wrong pronunciation, but I'm going to show a video which will be very interesting. I will also direct you to another session that we had done in our previous certificate course that was by a professor from Tirupati University, and she had discussed the oral tradition in the oral tradition and oral stories of goddess Andal. If I
Yes, ma'am.
remember correctly, that's one.
Andal. Yes.
Andal, yes, Andal. And I will also, we will be happy to guide you to some reading material on Burrakatha, Yakshagana, and other such traditions. Why I want to be very, very careful before commenting on a tradition that I am not directly exposed to is because somebody who has experienced it themselves has the correct authority to do so. And Zelam will agree with me, and I'll invite her once I finish. What I have learned from our theater teacher is that explore the traditions that are closest to you. Okay. So, for example, if you're in Hyderabad, it makes perfect sense to explore the storytelling traditions in the southern part of India. That is going to be more familiar to your students. Of course, you can bring in examples from other parts of the country also, but especially in the classroom situation, what is familiar, what is relatable, and what strikes very well with the student should be used. So even as an IKS researcher, this is not just for teaching, but I think this is also true for IKS research. IKS is such a vast terrain that many times we may get lost in terms of what to explore, what not to explore. So my recommendation and suggestion always is explore the local traditions that are closest to you. For example, the tradition that I did field work with is 100 kilometers from where I stay. I could go to 500 kilometers, or I could go to Haryana and do a study on their storytelling traditions, but I don't have the authority, plus it's not very accessible unless circumstances are different. So you're absolutely right, and we will definitely guide you to some uh, material which you can use in your classes, if that helps.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Madhviji, I'll take your question after I quickly finish. I just need 5 to 7 minutes to round off with some examples. Okay.
Okay, no.
Yeah, I hope Zelam is there. Zelam, please help me moderate the chat box as per your convenience. Okay, let's start. So now we are going to look at some examples, wide examples, consolidated list of examples of storytelling traditions from across Bharat. And each region in our country is rich with storytelling traditions. If all of you follow news, you know a Manipuri film, Boong, it was selected for the BAFTA Awards. Now, a story from Manipur gaining global recognition. It's interesting. It's so nice. You can tell stories about the globe. I can tell stories about New York. I can tell stories about London. But is that relevant to me as a Bharatiya? No. So I should rather be more interested. I can definitely explore global storytelling traditions, no problem with that. But am I interested in a story from Manipur, from Assam, from Hyderabad, from Tamil Nadu, from Gujarat, from Rajasthan? That is what should be of more relevance to all of us. So, of course, there are many examples, and we'll see three quick videos. There is Kathasaritsagar, there is Harikatha. Hopefully, we get a chance to talk about it in the upcoming sessions. There is Katha Kirtan. In Rajasthan, we have the Kawad tradition. Chhattisgarh is very well known for the Pandavani tradition, which are the stories from the lives of the Pandavas. And on the slide, you see Tijan Bai, who's a very well-known storyteller of the Pandavani tradition from Chhattisgarh. In Gujarat, we have Manabhat Akhanya, which is kind of a dying storytelling tradition here. We also have Bhavai, which is again a traditional storytelling form with a theatrical element with music, dance, dialogue, songs, characters, etc. We have Garba, our traditional dance, which is performed as a devotional dance. But if you listen to Garba songs, you will find stories being narrated in them as well. We do not just have storytelling in a very narrative format. We have storytelling traditions through masks and puppetry. And this photo that you see on the screen, I've not picked it up from Google or anywhere. This is from a workshop done in Baroda by our honorable theatre teacher, Shri P.S. Chari sir. He did a mask workshop, storytelling through masks. And this mask that you see is made by the participants of this workshop. Zelam will tell you more about it, and how masks can also be used to tell stories. So we have mask dances such as Kalinach, Gamira, Gambhira, Chau from Bengal and Uttar Pradesh, Krishnattam from Kerala. You can note down the names and then probably Google and find out some research-based articles on this. There is wonderful material available. There is Ramman from Uttarakhand, Ajilamu from Arunachal Pradesh, Katputli, all of us know, Rajasthan, Tolu and Bommalata from Andhra Pradesh, and Ravanachaya from Odisha. So these are storytelling traditions being carried forward through masks and puppetry. Of course, there are many different types of storytelling traditions in India, but broadly they have been categorized into 4 parts. One is musical storytelling, where basically stories are told in the form of music. So you have Katha, you have Kirtan, you have Pandavani. We'll see a video on Pandavani. You have Dasha Avatar, which is a traditional musical storytelling tradition from Maharashtra. You have stories being told through dance. I told you about Garba. We have Ras Leela in Brijwas. In Maharashtra, we have Tamasha, Gondhad, Ghumar, Kathakali. All these are storytelling traditions in the dance format. You have stories being told through painting, sculpture, architecture. So visit any of our civilizational monument, and not necessarily a temple, but if I visit the Lakshmi Vilas Palace here in Baroda, it is a intangible cultural heritage of Baroda's history and story. So I'm sure you have these opportunities if in your own towns and villages. And that is what we should be doing in Bharatiya Gyan Parampara, exploring that which is local and in proximity to us. So stories told in the form of cave paintings, temple carvings, wall paintings, stone architecture. This is another format of storytelling. And of course, we have modern day storytelling, in which we have the facilitation of technology. You have reels on Instagram, social media content, graffiti. For example, I travel to Europe quite often. And in Europe, graffiti is a very popular form, not just of protest, but also of storytelling. You will find that in the huge walls of many famous European towns, will definitely find graffitis, and these graffitis will try to convey a message or some story, or they'll try to reinforce something. So This is kind of a broad list of our storytelling traditions. We have Purana Pravachan. So in some storytelling traditions, of course, you find the devotional element to be very prominent. These are stories about gods, goddesses, and devotional figures. And in other storytelling forms, you have little devotional element, but more of cultural, societal elements. You have Katha Kathan. From Tamil Nadu, you have Vilupatu. From Karnataka, you have Yakshagana, which is a fusion of music, dance, dialogue. So I can imagine Bhavai. So what Bhavai is to Gujarat, maybe Yakshagana is to Karnataka. Then you have Kathayum Patum, Kolam from Tamil Nadu. In my recent visit to Tamil Nadu, I did realize the use of rice flour to kind of adorn the front space of the houses and shops. You have Mugu from Andhra Pradesh, Aripan from Bihar, Alpana, West Bengal. So mostly in Bengali households during rituals, you will find the Alpana, which is kind of a Rangoli art, but also storytelling. You have Bomalata, you have dialogues and Shastrarth in our knowledge scriptures. You have our epics like Mahabharata, Ramayana, Puran, Upanishad. You have very many examples of dialogues in all our epic scriptures, which are actually examples of storytelling. So that is why I recommended Upanishad Ganga in the first place. So the story of Satyakam, Acharya Gautam, Jabala, with each important figure in our itihas, and I will refrain from calling it mythology, I will call it itihas or our history. There is a story attached. You have the Buddha and the Jaina traditions, which are also replete with stories. In fact, if you explore mathematical texts in the Buddha and the Jaina traditions, you will find that even mathematical concepts are being taught using stories. Another good example is Bhaskaracharya's text Lilavati, which he named after his daughter, whom he was trying to train in mathematics. So this particular text is about mathematics, but it is told in the form of stories. So we are a civilization that was able to teach even science, technology, engineering, mathematics through stories. So you realize, I think, as a civilization, we were really able to achieve our intellectual and creative zenith. Okay, I'll not go into more details because Zalem will anyways be covering modern day storytelling. So this is kind of a timeline for storytelling. So you start with cave paintings and murals. So yeah, I'll give you the example of two of my friends who are Americans, but they're very invested in mural paintings, and they have traveled conflict zones across the world, worked with children, because they realized that working with children can be done in the best possible way if you use painting and stories. So they have used mural art to work with children in conflict zones who have traumatic histories, traumatic experiences, difficult childhoods. So how do you help these children release what they are going through? You do it through painting, and their paintings are reflective of their life stories. So this is something that has come to us as part of the legacy of storytelling. You have storytelling done in the oral format and the visual format. Then we move to written storytelling, and most of the major religious scriptures in the world got documented as written stories. And today we are in the era of digital storytelling. So just to round up why storytelling is important for Bharat, it helps you to connect with your past, which is very, very important for a civilization like ours. The past is not redundant. The past is important. We have to learn from it, but it also helps us remember who we were. So past helps us understand ourselves better, and we become appreciative as well as critical of our history. We just don't need to only appreciate, but we also need to look at it critically. All kind of storytelling is intangible cultural heritage. You can't touch a story, but it's there. So a story encompasses the knowledge, tradition, practices, and experiences, expressions, and emotions of entire generations and communities. It helps us to chart out a gateway to the future. If you remember stories from the past, you build onto those stories, you learn your lessons, you rely on your achievements, you draw important knowledge, and then you chart a path for your future. And any civilization that neglects its past, it stands out to decimate. You can't neglect your past. You do it at your own risk. You can't completely brush off the past, good or bad. So stories are some kind of bridge or link between the past and the future, especially in context of indigenous civilizations. And stories also heal. They offer wisdom, they offer knowledge, they offer cultural preservation, stability to culture. They help to create more conscious and sensible communities and individuals, and they also help you to stay rooted to your heritage. So again, I would not like to go into this. Maybe tomorrow in Zelam's session, we can discuss some resources that as educators and also as students, because educators are ultimately students only, we keep learning. We can use some of these resources in our classroom. Immediately, I would like to recommend a Sutradhar app. You can explore its website. You can also explore the mobile application and Prachyam, which is an Indic OTT platform that's very good for use in the classroom. These are some resources that I would like to recommend, but I will share it when we compile all the material. One is this reference about global folklore traditions. You can also look up Bharat. They have many articles on storytelling. And you can also look up this website, the Dharma Dispatch. So there are many, but there is one very important reference which I have shared here. Okay. Yes, this is by Chandra in 2019. This is an excellent paper. So if you want to have an overview, a broad understanding of storytelling traditions in India, this paper, which was published as part of a research project by the Indian Institute of Advanced Studies, Shimla, I think it is the go-to resource, and you can start with this. These are also some other resources, but yeah, I'll be happy to share it later on. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for your...
Can you please take me to the second last slide, the slide just before the reference?
Yeah, sure. Just a moment, Zelam.
Apps slide 2, ma'am.
Which one are you referring to?
The just before the reference. Yes, this one. This one.
So these are recommendations from my side because I have used these, but you may have different resources which you can share and we can exchange through the course of this particular 10-day program.
Are these books or apps?
Who's this? Sorry.
This is Uma.
Okay, okay. Umaji, one Sutradhar is a website as well as an app.
Okay.
Prachyam is an OTT platform, but if you don't want to subscribe to this OTT platform, you can follow their YouTube and you can use resources from there. I have a subscription, so and they have a dedicated session. They have a dedicated segment for children. They do a lot of civilizational story. They create a lot of civilizational storytelling content for young children. Storyboard, that is a platform that Zalem will talk more about because she's more proficient with it. And Pratham Books is also stories for kids. These are
Okay,
books.
their books. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. And it's very interesting how, I only day before yesterday, there was a story trending on Twitter and Instagram about how a father has gifted all his comic books to his young son. He's opening a suitcase full of comic books from his childhood, Champak, Chacha Chaudhary, and many others, Twinkle. And he's gifting it. So he's saying this is the legacy that I am now passing on to you. You read these. So, there are people who are really holding on to our storytelling legacy. Okay. Yes, let's take quick questions because I want all of us to watch 3 videos, not very long, 30 seconds only. But before that, I want to address some questions. And Shweta ji, please stay in the session. Shweta ji, is she there?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Yeah, so I'll show a video on Vilupatu.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so Salem has responded about storyboards. Great, thank you. AI may interest and engage this generation into stories in a way they like to learn and explore. Yes, absolutely. There are AI tools that are already being used. So for example, personally, I use ChatGPT when I've not explored others like Perplexity or Gemini. But in purely my experience, when I wanted to create a narrative about something that is Bharatiya and Indian in character, I found ChatGPT much better. So definitely, we have to speak to the generation in the language and with the tools that they understand. Yes. Zalem, please address some of these aspects in your last session. Shriti ji is asking, with the rise of AI-generated narratives and digital storytelling platforms, do you think traditional oral storytelling will transform into a new hybrid form? Okay, great question. Is there a risk of losing the human and performative essence that traditions like Pandwani or Kathakali carry? That's a good question. Thank you, Shriti ji. Yes, quite a few of our oral storytelling traditions are already struggling to survive, and you will be able to understand this only when you meet these traditional storytellers, for which you will have to travel and go to these specific areas where these art forms are being practiced. So they're definitely being threatened by many forces. They're also being threatened not just by AI tools, but also by the apathy of the current generation, which is probably a bit deracinated and disconnected from their civilizational roots. And I'll talk more about this in my next session. So it's not just technology or urban forces or global forces or lack of monetary support that these forms are finding it difficult, but it is also a general lack of interest among young people to carry these traditions forward. But the brighter side of this is that there are many institutions, individuals, group of people, NGOs, and of course, government has also taken note of these storytelling traditions. They are providing recognition to traditional storytellers. They are ensuring that they are recognized and their work is known. There is more money being poured into it for preservation of these traditions. So that is the brighter side. For example, I have a friend who is into advertising, but she works with traditional artisans in the northern part of Gujarat and tries to spread awareness about these traditional artisans and their work using some form of storytelling. So there are these interested individuals. So it may definitely lose the original essence that it had, But if there is a collective will and push to preserve it, it will still survive. As long as there are people who are interested and invested, this will survive. And theater practitioners, musicians, dancers, artists, filmmakers. I mean, I always think of which are the films which are working successfully these days, which are being liked and appreciated. These are films that have some or the other civilizational connect.
Thank you so much, Nidhi, for explaining me very beautifully. Shriti this side. Actually, I am into media storytelling. So I basically talked with my few juniors and my friends. They are into AI things. Like they always told me that use AI and just research and whatever the scripting you are doing, just do that. But I
Yes.
basically feel that if I research, I read, and I like listen to videos, those are about cultural thing and tradition, about storytelling and all, so that would affect a lot, and I can spread the genuine information towards the video. So
Mhm.
I want to know more about it. Could you please forward me or something few videos where I can learn more about the storytelling in a few pure way, how our eldest experienced teachers do.
Sure. Sritiji, I would request you to reach out to me on WhatsApp, uh,
Sure.
explain a little bit in detail of what exactly you're looking out for, and then I can definitely guide you to some useful resources. Uh, just for the information of all our participants, towards the end of this certificate course, we will be compiling some reading material for all of you, and we'll be
Mm-hmm.
sharing it with all of you. So whenever you feel that you need to use it in whichever space you are in, class or otherwise, or in some professional space, media space,
Mm-hmm.
you can use it.
Sure, sure. I'll be here. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. There was a question that I would like to take by Madhavi ji. I think she was asking how we can use these stories in our classrooms, especially with UG students. So, couple of quick things that we can do, Madhavi ji, is number one, we can first not start with civilizational stories, but we can start with stories that come from our immediate surroundings. For a quick example is when I was teaching, I found that the stories that best connected with my students were coming from my own travel experiences. And I would naturally, very organically share a story that emanated from my travel experience. They were very happy to listen to it. It always carried some lesson or the other, and it also gave them a peekaboo into a different culture. So I used this in the first place because travel is something that everybody likes. It excites everybody. Even if you can't travel, you can at least be happy listening to somebody else's travel story. So first try to find out what works immediately in your surroundings. That is number one. Number two could be using very popular stories, those that are widely known. It could also be from some other culture. It could be from Japanese, South Korean culture, but it's relatable. It's easily accessible and familiar. So that will break the wall, breaking the fourth wall. Zalem can talk about it. Third, what you can use, this is what currently I'm a student of Sanskrit. And what I observed that there are two things that I observed and would like to emphasize here, that language is best learned through stories. So when my teacher was teaching me Sanskrit, and of course I learned it in a formal setting with peers, when we were being taught through the textbook, the learning was less effective. But when we were being taught grammar and vibhakti and vyanjan and avyay through stories, and each one of us had to remember a story, come and narrate it, point out the grammatical basics, that helped us to remember easily, and it also made us confident about the language. Also, what is very, very important is that Language is again best learned through listening. So you can also use storytelling in your classroom for enhancing the listening and comprehension skills. So no need to always narrate a story, make them listen to a story, make them watch a story. That can also be done. So the onus is not always on the teacher to narrate the story. This can be used. And the last step could be asking them to curate a story, write a story, narrate a story. We have done it in our institution. We always do a storytelling, a story writing competition as part of our student fest. So that's a next step where your students are not just listening to somebody else's story, but they're also creating their own. So these could be some very immediate activities that you could do with UG students. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. I got the point. Especially the way you started the today's session also. You have narrated about the international storytelling characters and briefly their way of storytelling. So
Yes.
now I got, after completely listening to your session, I got a bit of idea to implement in my class. Especially I am from Sanskrit.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Yes.
Thank you.
One thing that I just came across and I thought I would share it with all of you. Sorry. Okay, let's quickly just one or two more minutes and then we can wind up. I don't want all of you to leave this session without watching these videos. Just yeah, I have to present my tab. Okay, so this is from Chhattisgarh, the Pandwani tradition, and this is Srimati Tijan Bai, who is a very well-known proponent of this tradition.
या व्यास नारायण मंत्र वहन करके जब गर्भ भले पीड़ तैयार कराइन तो गंधारी देख के कहे हे भगवान ना तो यहाँ लड़का है ना तो लड़की तय का करे भोलानाथ ते बोले रहे 100 ठने बेटा 1 ठा बेटी पर यहाँ कुछ भी नहीं। व्यास नारायण कहे गंधारी धीरज धर, ये 100 खून बना के तैयार कर दिन कका और बोटी बोटी काट काट के 100 खून में भरा के और मस्त वहाँ घी डाल दी तो 100 ठने पुत्र के साथ साथ 1 लड़की तैयार। और तब भय पर गता ये बैरी मोर भय पर गता
Yes, so this is from Chhattisgarh. Okay, now we'll quickly go to Rajasthan and we'll quickly watch a short video of the storytelling tradition, very popular storytelling tradition from Rajasthan, that is the Kawad tradition. Just a minute. So let me share my screen quickly again. So there are 3 communities that are part of the Kawad tradition. So as I told you, storytelling is a community endeavor. So look at how the Kawad tradition involves 3 communities and the tradition is preserved because all 3 communities are involved in it.
कावड़ कला क्या है कि ये एक ट्रेडिशनल आर्ट है, ये एक स्टोरी टेलिंग है, इसके अंदर कई प्रकार की कहानियाँ होती है। ये कावड़ क्या है कि 3 कम्युनिटी मिलके काम करती है। एक तो सुथार कम्युनिटी कावड़ को बनाता है और भाट कम्युनिटी है जो इसको गांव-गांव लेके जाता है और इनके जजमानों के यहाँ पे जाके इसकी कथाएं सुनाता है और नए जजमान जोड़ते हैं। ये उड़ जाते हैं दीपावली के 15 दिन बाद, तो ये कंधे पे कावड़ लेके घर से निकल जाते हैं। जब तक वापस देव नहीं सोते हैं तब तक ये घर नहीं लौटते हैं, क्योंकि अगर जजमान नहीं होंगे तो वो कहाँ गए। तीसरी कम्युनिटी इसकी जो जजमान होता है वो इसकी तीसरी कम्युनिटी है।
So 3 communities are involved in the Kawad tradition, the Sutars, the Bhats and the Jajman. And the last video...
This is also related to this new photography. Nice.
Sorry?
Oh, my mic. Sorry, ma'am. My mic is on. Ayo.
No problem. Please feel free.
Actually, this cover tradition, ma'am, this new tradition which came for the photos, like they open it as a book and the first cover
Yeah,
will be there, and next to the photo tradition also. It was like
yeah.
related to that.
Yes, yes. Now let's look at Villapatu. And this is a very interesting video. Anybody, for example, I didn't know much about it, though I have a few articles that I can share with Shweta ji, which she can refer to. So in 1 minute, 1 minute 30 seconds, she's explained the tradition very beautifully.
தந்தனத்தம் என்று சொல்லியே வில்லினில் பாட. Wait. I'm not a trained professional, not an expert at this. This is the villu which is used in the oral musical storytelling art form from Tamil Nadu called as Villupattu or Villisai. And this is very precious to me because my students have given this to me as a gift. Now, this is a model and not a replica. So many of us who grew up during the early years of Doordarshan must be familiar with this because it was hugely popularized by Padma Shri Thiru Subbu Arumugam Avargal. So there is a bow, the lead taps, tells stories in a musical form, sings songs. He or she has a chorus as well. My students also told me about the background story or the origin story, which I'm waiting to tell you. So once upon a time, there was a king who goes out for hunting. He kills many animals, feels bad at the end of the day, and his minister comes to his rescue and says, if you're feeling so bad thinking about the suffering that these animals must have gone through, why don't you express your remorse, ask for forgiveness through songs by singing to God. Now, they were in the forest, there were no musical instruments, so the king turns his bow over, balances it on an earthen pot, which is used for storing water, and he sings songs. Villupattu was born. Don't you think we need to revive these art forms in our schools and colleges, in our organizations today? What do you think? Leave a comment. Do you know something about Villupattu? Leave a comment.
Yes, so to me, it was very interesting, the story behind the origin of Villapatu. So yes, I think somebody asked Maharajanji, you are asking about storytelling traditions from Tamil Nadu. Villapatu is one. There are others also that I did mention in my slide. I can quickly take you through it. Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank
Yes.
you.
Yeah. Yes, I would now invite Dr. Vikas to take over for any closing comments.
I think all the questions were answered in the chat box, Zelam madam, and I also have written a few things. Let's conclude today's session. It's 8:15 already.
Yes,
and,
yes.
Yes, we will see all the participants tomorrow with Zelam madam's session. Again, an
Yes.
interesting session that is coming up.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and I just want to give you a hint of the same. Today we understood about Shravana, and tomorrow we'll listen a story about Shravana.
Yes, great. Wonderful. And I would like to express gratitude to everyone for participating enthusiastically and actively. Yes, somebody asked about another tradition from Tamil Nadu, Kathayum Patum. That's also a tradition from Tamil Nadu. I'll try to find out more. So yes, let's make this a mutually learning process. So we would like all participants to share interesting information and knowledge about storytelling traditions from your part, where you belong to, where you come from. That way we can also learn about different storytelling traditions. So great, we gather tomorrow. Just give me a quick moment to stop the recording.
It was a beautiful